Kurt Helin. In fact, he joins us now, NBC Sports and ProBasketballTalk.com. Kurt, how are you?
Hey, Kurt.
I'm doing good, gentlemen. How are you?
So good.
So good.
Man, you sound crystal clear.
Well, we'll screw that up somehow, don't we?
Yeah. Hey, look, we even got you on the video. Look, we are making progress here in this world. Hey, first off, obviously you hate talking about injuries, but Golden State and Jimmy Butler take a big blow there. What's the future look like for Jimmy? Do you feel like at this point in his career he's able to respond off of something like that and get back to somewhat of a groove, or could this spark the end of the great run of Jimmy Butler?
He's going to want to push through it and get back, and he's under contract for next year. By the way, under contract for like $56 million.
Yeah.
So, it really ties them up. He'll push through and try to come back next season, but at his age with that injury, he's probably not going to be quite the same guy. And after that, it's going to be a determination for him, for the Warriors, for every other team that might have some interest. Like, how much are you willing to pay for what he can still look? The toughness he's going to bring, the intensity, what he brings to the locker room will still be there, but he's probably not going to be quite the same player at his age after this injury. So, to be blunt about it, what's the number? If you're interested, at 25 million instead of 50, that might be a lot more interesting to some teams that are trying to have a veteran leader in the locker room that wants to push through with a young core. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, we kind of all felt like maybe the Golden State model was broken in half and wasn't going anywhere, but here they find themselves third in the Pacific, and they found themselves 25-19, and they were at least getting what they needed out of players to get some wins. Yep. So what does this do to the overall Golden State brand as they've got to work through another half a year?
Yeah, I was about to say the timing sucks. Dude, the timing's always going to suck if you tear your ACL, but they had won, I think, 12 of 16, 12 of 14, something like that, and 4 in a row, had climbed up out of the West and was starting, like you said, we're starting to look like a team that maybe they're not going to come out of the West, but look like they could be a threat. Now it gets interesting because they're going to have to play Jonathan Kuminga. Steve Kerr is going to have to put the athleticism of Kuminga in there and see what happens. And that's going to be a wild card heading into the trade deadline as well, because they were looking for center help and specific things, and now they kind of have to think differently going into the trade deadline. And I don't know that Kuminga's trade value brings back much more than a rack of shoot-around basketballs and the bag of Doritos. Anyway. Yeah.
I mean, you can look, we can all ask for a trade, but unless you have value, it's like, sorry, that's cute that you would like that, but no, that's not going to happen. The Jazz end up losing to the San Antonio Spurs, and I know we've been talking a lot about this throughout the season, but there's just a different vibe here in Salt Lake City about this Jazz team than there was last year. Last year it was just like, this is horrible. And they're still not winning a lot of games, but they just look a little outside of that 55-point loss to Charlotte. We'll just kind of brush that aside. Yeah. This is a team that seems to compete. There's got nice pieces. Bryce Sensabaugh went on a heater a couple of games ago. Yeah. There's been some nice storylines about this team and their continued progression.
There's a lot to like in terms, and we've talked about this, just in terms of trying to build a solid foundation going forward, whatever that ultimately ends up looking like, right? Like at the end of the day, if you're going to win in today's NBA, you've got to be able to draft well, develop guys, turn them into at least foundational cores. You can, the Thunder traded for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, sure, but I mean, they helped develop him and Chet and Jalen Williams and, on and on down the line. Then they filled it in with, hey, we're going to go get another big man, and we're going to go get Caruso, but we built the core internally. That's kind of how you have to do it in today's NBA, unless you're basically the Lakers. Like they're the only, there's a couple, maybe the Knicks, there's a couple of exceptions to the rule, but in general, you've got to develop everybody. And Utah's on that path. This is a fun young team that feels like in a year or two, it's really going to start to click for them.
We are exactly a month away, just under a month away from the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And there has, like Scotty mentioned, there's been some nice pieces. Keontae George, Walker Kessler's damaged, but he's kind of waiting in the wings. Lowry is what he is with the Utah Jazz, but we've seen certain guys, even Isaiah Collier's had flashes at moments. As you look at the pieces, you think of the Jazz assets, you think of some of the value that's out there. Do you see the Jazz exploding into the trade deadline with some gigantic moves or being quiet and reserving?
I would expect quiet and reserved. Frankly, I think it's going to be a little quieter deadline than people expect. Everybody loves the hype, but I just think a lot of the big names aren't going to move. And a lot of the big names or the big moves they're on the wrong timeline, right? Like, we've already discussed whether Lowry is on the right timeline, but like, as great as Giannis is, that's a win now timeline that they're not really ready to go on, right? Like, there's other players out there. So I don't think they're going to try to bring in anybody like that right now. Will they? I don't think they're trading any of those. If somebody came in with a ridiculous offer for Bryce Sensabaugh, they'd take it. But I don't think you're going to have to blow them away to get anybody out of there. And that includes Kessler, who, like you said, is kind of looked a little injury prone the last couple of years. But when he's played, he's looked great. And there's some real value now in being able to get him on a contract that's going to be a little more team friendly. And if he can stay healthy, that's going to be a great deal for a few years.
Is the hype with this upcoming draft class, is it escalating? Is it about where you thought it would be? Because it seems like the more we watch some of these kids go, the more it's everybody's kind of looking forward to July of 26.
Yes. No, this draft is – I got fortunate last year to go see up the Hoop Summit in Portland and watch some of these guys practice and play each other up for a week. And this is a really deep class. And it's not just everybody talks about the big three at the top with AJ and, Carlos Boozer and Darren Peterson, but like the point guard out of North Carolina, who Martin, I think it is, like I'm going blank off the name off the top of my head, has looked really good when I've seen him. And like scouts are getting really high on him. This is a class that is 6 or 7 deep. And you gave into Nate Emmett and stuff. There's really good players deeper in this draft. So yes, you want to be at the top, but this is a draft worth being hyped over. And with that, you're going to see plenty of teams trying to find their way to the top of the draft, shall we say.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of General Pattons driving their tanks around out there second half of this season.
I try to follow as many of these projections as I can, and you're seeing Darren Peterson often in front of AJ DeBonsa. Can one or the other play themselves into that number one overall? And in your experience, in your time covering the draft, how coveted is that, being the number one overall, when it just comes to, respect dished from the NBA?
It comes with a certain prestige and, by the way, a bigger paycheck. So, yeah, guys want it. But there is a certain power. It's interesting. Zach Harper did a fun thing at The Athletic the other day, though, or maybe it was this morning, where he's like, all right, let's go back through the drafts where we kept thinking there was a big three. And most of the time, one or two of those guys doesn't translate as well as we thought they would, right? Like, and it'll be interesting to see if that happens here and if somebody else farther back kind of rises up. But I'll just say, having seen them last year, I think Boozer's for real, and people like to use the Paolo Banchero analogy for me, but I like young Kevin Love might be a better example for him. AJ is just so athletic, and I was wondering if his ability to hit tough shots would translate, and it absolutely has. And that's a great skill to have at the next level. Peterson's fantastic, just on and on down the line. This is going to be a very good draft at the top. And, if you can get the right guy and develop him, you can have that foundational cornerstone that every team's looking for.
How bad are things in New York for the Knicks?
Did you watch some of that yesterday?
Yeah.
That was hard to watch. It was an interesting report today because last night, look, the guys on the NBC broadcast, Carmelo and them were saying, like, we can tell the chemistry's off from out here. There's something going on in the locker room that's kind of obvious. And they've, lost I think 5 in a row now, and a bunch. way too many lately. They're sliding back into what was a deep Eastern Conference where it's really bunched up in the middle. Are they buying into Mike Brown? I mean, I guess that's the question, because early on we're like, oh, they'll come around on that, guys, but it doesn't look to me like they fully have bought in on both ends. And I don't know if that's complacency or because they're like, oh, we'll just flip the switch, or if it's something Mike Brown specific, but they don't look better than they did last year, do they?
No, not by a mile.
No, much less.
And it's not some cakewalk through the look. I still like the way they're built, but Detroit's real. Boston not only is playing well, they get that Jason Tatum guy back.
He's good.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
And suddenly they look like a real threat. And like that, the East playoffs are going to be fascinating, because in the West, it's, hey, is anybody actually better than Oklahoma City? And probably not. But in the East, dude, it's wide open.
Just curious, losing Jalen Williams for a bit. Speaking of Oklahoma City, losing Jalen Williams for a bit, third leading scorer on that roster behind Chet and Shea. How bad does that hurt them? And what have you heard about Jalen Williams' injury? How long might he be out?
It's a hamstring, so they're saying reevaluate it in a couple weeks, but this could be certainly longer than that. Look, it certainly doesn't help their depth, and but they seem to have found themselves. Look, they went 24-1 basically without him to start the season. Remember, he missed the whole start, still recovering from the hand injury from last year, the thumb injury, and he's still not quite right from it. You can see he's still learning how to his shooting touch isn't the same after the thumb surgery, which is kind of understandable, but he hasn't found his way all the way back yet. So they'll be fine, especially in the regular season with their defense and everything. They'll need him in the playoffs, but I don't think it really impacts them that much right now. They're still they went out this week, and I think without him for one of these games at least, they smoked the Rockets. They smoked the Spurs. They crushed the Cavaliers yesterday. The only game they lost recently is because the nightlife in Miami remains undefeated.
Oh, yeah. Yep. There's no doubt about that. Kurt Helin joining us from NBC Sports and ProBasketballTalk.com. All right, so I got to ask you, this was always a big topic of conversation during COVID, but you do have the impressive bookshelf behind you on the video stream. How much work goes into displaying the right books that you want people to associate you with?
So, yeah, when you have a wife who's an English teacher, you
nice.
Stockpile a lot of this is one of the bookshelves. There are plenty of others, and frankly, boxes of books we haven't even brought out in this home. I do have displayed. I kind of rotate some of the stuff behind me. I don't know what's visible in the shot over my shoulder, but I have the God Schmagad,
a Hollywood ending
book that came out. Which, if you're just a basketball fan who kind of wants to read, like of a certain age and want to read stories, God Schmagad's book is just like. He is the Forrest Gump of been everywhere, knows everybody, touched everything. It's a great book. I've got Roland Lazenby's Magic back there. Anything by Roland's always good.
Nice. Well done. Well, we appreciate your time as always. Thanks for hanging out with us, and appreciate you putting up with us on the video stream. Looking forward to catch up with you again next week.
The absolute best,
man. Nothing drives ratings like three bald guys on TV.
Oh, so true. They love it.
This segment brought to you by Mr. Clean. Yes.
They love it. Brought to you by Just for Men.
Yeah.
Not only are we a client.
Yeah.
We're not clients.
You're the best, Kurt. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, guys. Take care.
There he is, Kurt Helin, NBC Sports, ProBasketballTalk.com.